Aging like a fine wine. Are all wines capable of aging? The short answer is no. Not all wines are capable of aging like George Clooney or Halle Berry. In fact, no, some wines may come across a bit plasticky, may fall apart a little bit. Maybe a little bit like Friends, the reunion. But I'm not here to judge. I'm here to tell you how it all works. So, according to Jancis Robinson, the top 10% of all red wines and the top 5% of all white wines are capable of aging. That means there's round about 90% of wines in the world that are not suitable for aging. That doesn't necessarily mean that these wines will expire. No, it just means that these wines may lose their best qualities with time, which originally made them attractive. When we say to drink a wine young, we mean to drink a wine within 2 to 3 years of that wine being released. A good rule of thumb is that any wine under 120 Rand is not generally suitable for aging. Exceptions do occur. You'll often hear wine geeks talk about primary notes, secondary notes, and tertiary notes. Primary aromas are often considered with fruit profiles or talking about herbaceous characteristics. We can talk about apples, pears, peaches, apricots, green bell pepper, smoked paprika, roasted chilies. All of those can be considered primary characters. Secondary aromas are often characteristics which are imparted on the wine by winemaking techniques. So we're talking about barrel aging here, for instance, which will impart notes of vanilla often. And if you're letting the wine undergo malolactic conversion, you can talk about creamy, buttery flavors. And finally, we have tertiary characteristics. Tertiary characteristics are aromas and flavors that you'll find with age. Now we're talking here about leather, charcuterie, salami, chorizo, mushrooms, forest floor. All of these characteristics start popping up with age. Realistically speaking, what you will find is that young wines that have just been released will showcase a lot of primary fruit within the first 2 to 3 years. With time, those primary fruits will decrease and secondary and tertiary aromas will increase. Now what you will find is there will be a certain point where all three categories are well represented. And this is usually considered the sweet spot where you'd want to drink your wine. And this takes time to reach. Having said that, the sweet spot is often considered subjective. It is up to you how and when you like your wines. Now we've arrived back at the difficult question of how do we know if your wine is age-worthy or not? You may know a wine by its pedigree. Pedigree meaning you know how this wine has performed in the past. You may have had a bottle before. You may have been told that this is a fantastic bottle. You can put it aside for years and years and years. This isn't always reliable because wines do change from vintage to vintage, and it makes a lot more sense to assess the wine itself that's in front of you. There's no real way to tell if a wine is age-worthy or not just by looking at it on the shelf. That's not going to happen. You need to taste it and you need to assess it yourself. There are 5 components that I look at when making my selection on which wines to age. The first is fruit, the second is acidity, the third is sugar, the fourth is alcohol, and finally, tannin. So, fruit. Fruit is really important. You want to have a wine that's going to have enough fruit to stand the test of time. Remember, fruit decreases over time. Acidity is crucially important. Yes, wines are acidic. In fact, they're around about the same acidity as an orange juice. Now, really important that a wine has vibrant, a juicy, a zesty acidity at the beginning of its life because this too will break down over time. Another often overlooked factor is sugar. Now, sugar is immense. It preserves wines immensely well. Some of the best age-worthy wines in the world are sweet wines. Now, we don't see many of those in South Africa because we have a tendency to focus on dry wines. But some of the best wines like Sauternes or sweet Rieslings are phenomenal and stand the test of time very well. I've had a 1976 Riesling that knocked my socks off. Now, this is also because they have a high acidity to balance the sweetness of the wine, as well as a low alcohol content. Alcohol! Who would have thunk? Alcohol can be considered volatile to still wines. Now, here's the thing. Alcohol can break down a wine until it eventually becomes vinegar. This is not the case with fortified wines that have been intentionally increased on the alcohol level. In South Africa, we have a tendency to hover around the 14% alcohol mark. Now, this could be quite high in comparison to the rest of the world. And often, this higher alcohol level is not conducive to aging your wines for longer. This is not always the case. And finally, tannins. Now, tannins are also really important. You find tannins in the stems, the seeds, the skins of grapes, as well as in the barrel itself. Now, you'll usually find these only in red wines. However, you can find them on, for instance, orange wines. But that's a topic for another time. Tannins are seen as a structural component to any red wine, and these have a tendency to be quite aggressive, quite strong at the beginning of their life, and it is said that they break down over time, they smooth out. Those 5 components are what makes a wine age-worthy. There's one more really important factor, and it's an encompassing factor, and that is balance. The balance of a wine needs to be exceptional to age. The fruit needs to be in balance with the acidity needs to be in balance with the sugar, the tannins need to be round and need to be firm and stand the test of time. All of these factors are crucially important, and you wouldn't be able to age the wine without this balance. If any of these factors were to stick out, you wouldn't have a quality to stand the test of time. Of course, when you break it down into the nitty-gritty, there's a lot of things you could still say. For instance, each cultivar has its own advantages and disadvantages when aging. Some will retain a lot of fruit, some may not. Some will brown easier, others may not. Others will go forever and a day, and in their youth they're incredibly rough around the edges. It really is all a game of personal choice. What do you enjoy? That's all we have time for today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. Give us a like, comment, share the video, and one other thing that I'd ask of you is please let us know if there's anything that you'd like us to take you through in the next couple of weeks. We hope we can. And then from my side, join me next time as I'll be taking you through how to store your wines and what value your aged wines actually have. Cheers. See you soon.